We affirm that our sole contention is collective action. Over the last few years, China has been rapidly expanding into the South China Sea. Fan of Forbes 17 explains that the Chinese government claims 90% of the region, overlapping with the territorial waters of smaller Asian nations. These claims have led countries to try and reassert control via the militarization of islands and aggressive naval drills, creating a highly tense situation that can quickly escalate into conflict. Absent U.S. accession to UNCLOS, the situation is guaranteed to escalate. As the Zoom of the American Security Project 15 writes, that China has weaponized UNCLOS, interpreting it to restrict naval freedom of navigation within a country's extended economic zone, or EEZ, and thereby deeming U.S. action in Chinese waters as illegal. As a result, two imposing interpretations of the treaty have emerged. China, who uses it to restrict freedom and enable aggression, while the United States uses it as the foundation of freedom of navigation that has brought order to the sea. Unfortunately, the 12 in the Naval Law Review 12 indicates that China's interpretation is gaining traction internationally, as China criticizes the U.S. as self-serving and disingenuous by highlighting that the U.S. benefits from UNCLOS but avoids membership due to its distrust of the international community. The Asian Review in June confirms that the inconsistency in U.S. foreign policy with regards to following UNCLOS concerns our regional allies, even leading nations like the Philippines to question the reliability of America to the point where it's willing to pivot to China. Moreover, Stewart of the Atlantic in July writes that powers like Brazil, Malaysia, Peru, and India have all restricted navigation within their EEZs in contravention to their obligations. Hatchett of the Center for American Progress in 2012 thus predicts that in any new version of the convention, most coastal powers would favor China's interpretation of territorial rights, enabling a wave of global aggression. But even if China's interpretation never officially becomes law, the insecurity created by U.S. and army participation is driving tensions to an all-time high, as Gates of the Diplomat 17 confirms that the absence of the rule of law at sea has led East Asian countries to believe that they can no longer rely on the U.S. for protection, creating unprecedented military buildup that raises the risk of conflict. The solution is simple. To defend its interpretation and prevent conflict, the U.S. should ratify UNCLOS. But Necco of the Naval War College 11 writes that due to the enhanced legitimacy gained through ratification, U.S. actions would immediately receive tacit support from over 100 nations party to the convention, allowing commanders to more aggressively assert navigational rights from within their existing legal frameworks while challenging problematic amendments from within the ISA. Not only does accession prevent escalation, it also facilitates a global coalition ensuring long-term stability. Scott Morgenson of the Council on Foreign Relations 09 writes that joining the convention would provide the U.S. with the opportunity to take a leadership role in the first truly global maritime partnership, a coalition of 156 nations committed to freedom of navigation. Beneco verifies that as UNCLOS already provides the framework for communication and resolution of disputes, it would immediately become a platform for collective action. It is important to note, as Gates continues, the U.S. is the only actor with the power, relationships, and leverage necessary to bring about an enduring solution. Without our participation, China has sufficient leverage to deadlock negotiations. This is empirically verified, as Eric Heyer writes in his book The Pragmatic Dragon, that China has historically been willing to compromise and establish legitimate boundaries through negotiations, even ceding territory believed to have belonged to China historically. In both the early 1960s and late 70s, when China was confronted by a coalition of nations, including the U.S., Russia, and India, Chinese leaders chose their strategic military and economic relationships over their territorial ambitions. The impact is preserving economic stability. Increased tensions in the South China Sea have the potential to destabilize international financial flows, spiking prices of basic goods, and impoverishing millions. As Liam of Bloomberg 18 argues, this shipping of commodities remains concentrated on increasingly vulnerable trade routes that, when disrupted, become choke points in the global food supply, spiking prices and cutting off millions. This would be disastrous, as Crabtree 16 of CNBC writes that $5 trillion worth of trade and 1.5 billion individual livelihoods depend on the economic activity in the South China Sea, and with geopolitical risk at an all-time high, it is no surprise why the World Bank in 2011 reports that just a single price spike in 2010 pushed 44 million people into poverty, and to prevent the Cuban Missile Crisis, we affirm.
Is everyone good? Great. Let's start time now. We negate that the United States should accede to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Seas without reservations. Our sole contention is cracking open the Arctic. The Arctic ice is currently melting, opening it up to resource extraction. The U.S. Energy Information Agency reports that the Arctic holds 25% of the world's oil and gas reserves. With countries looking to take advantage, Jamie McIntyre of the Washington Examiner concludes that due to the lack of communication and competition for resources, the Arctic is the site of the next Cold War. There are two ways in which the United States' accession to UNCLOS would accelerate the race to the Arctic. Subpoint A is accelerating Russian expansion. Brian of McMaster University explains that in preparation for U.S. expansion into the Arctic, Russia has established itself as the dominant regional power, with Grammar of Foreign Policy concluding in 2017 that Russia has constructed 40 new icebreakers, 14 airfields, and 16 new deep water ports. However, the U.S. has refused to challenge Russia in the Arctic. Hauke Penn State concludes that without UNCLOS, the U.S. cannot make claims in the Arctic. This has de-escalated the situation, as Thelson in 2017 finds that Russian investment in Arctic military and infrastructure development has been cut 17 times, which is why Burke of the Week in 2016 notes that this wait-and-see strategy is the best strategy for the United States to pursue. However, if the U.S. were to accede and stake its claims, it would bring tensions back to the Arctic. Brian of McMaster University elaborates that U.S. expansion on its economic and political presence in the Arctic is Russia's
national security threat, and Russia will strive to maintain its balance of power. Even if nobody wants war, Boring of the School of Advanced Military Studies finds that escalations in the Arctic could lead to a miscalculation towards conflict. There are two reasons why Russia war is more likely than war against China. First, the United States and Russia are not as economically independent, making escalation more likely. Second is miscalculation. The Arctic lacks the developed tech and intelligence infrastructure of the South China Sea, so miscalculation is more likely. Subpoint B is American drilling. Currently, 1/3 of the Arctic's petroleum resources lie within America's extended continental shelf. However, Gardner 12 of the ASP explains that companies won't drill in the Arctic until they are backed by the legal framework of UNCLOS, noting that companies have expressed their need for the maximum level of international legal certainty before they will or could make these substantial investments into exploration. Drilling in the Arctic would devastate the environment in two ways. The first is through oil combustion. McKinnon of Greenpeace quantifies that emissions from the combustion of Arctic oil will lead to at least a 5°C increase in worldwide temperatures by 2100. Second is through methane emissions. Inside Climate News quantifies that leaks during the drilling, production, and transmissional stages of natural gas are the largest source of methane emissions, accounting for about 1/3 of all man-made emissions. Dr. McPherson of the University of Arizona finds that methane can cause global mean temperatures to rise more than 10°C. The impact is damaging the environment. Because global warming leads to more extreme weather patterns, reducing rainfall, and slowing down manual labor, a 2011 study by the National Research Council finds that every 1 degree increase in global warming leads to a 5 to 15 degree decrease in crop yields. Further, the Clean and Green Foundation writes that most of the air pollution we create comes from the burning of fossil fuels. Air pollution is toxic and causes cancer, and often results in chronic illness such as cancer. The MIT Technology Review quantifies that 1 in 6 deaths worldwide are caused by air pollution, most of which are in underprivileged countries with little access to medical service. Thus, we strongly urge an act.
Is this the first time you've read this case? Yeah, this is the first time you've read this case, I think.
It's a new case?
I think they've gone half every round and out rounds, and their negative 4 was just bats. So, like, it was bats.
Okay, what are bats?
What? Yeah, they do.
Is everyone ready?
Your hand.
Is your subpoint B about Arctic drilling? Does the United States have full access to its extended economic zone, or EEZ?
It has full EEZ. That's your question?
Yeah.
Alright, let's talk about your idea about collective action, right?
Yeah.
You say that China is gaining more support, right? So why are these nations turning towards China?
They're getting fully determined.
Wait, how?
So China's economic muscle is bigger than any other countries except the United States. So what they do is they take countries one-on-one and say that if you're not going to support my interpretation, I'm just going to.
So why does the United States need to be in UNCLOS for them to
Because
counter out
the Gates evidence says that the United States is the only actor with the power, relationships, and economic leverage. For example, if China says to Vietnam, for example, if you do not support my interpretation, I'm going to sanction you, the United States is the only actor that can fill the void that was created.
You didn't answer my question, guys.
Yeah, I just did.
My nuanced question was, why do we need to join UNCLOS for America to
because
provide
the Azuma evidence and the de Tolbe evidence says that these countries are not working with the United States because we are not a part of UNCLOS.
Wait, that makes no sense.
Yeah,
If all of these countries are united against China and the cause against China, why do they need UNCLOS, a piece of paper, to bind them to the United
Because
States?
the
Look at one of those
Azuma
wings there.
evidence and the de Tolbe evidence and the Neko evidence and the Borgensen evidence all say that in order to lead that coalition, we need to be in
And my
UNCLOS.
analysis says that's not true.
All right,
So
we're
let's
just-
compare the warrants. You
we're
give your
just-
warrant, I give mine. So let's talk about it.
Sure.
Why do we need UNCLOS for nations to side with America's interpretation?
I literally just gave you the, okay, so if we are not in UNCLOS, we cannot lead the coalition. We don't have a leader to follow.
Why? Wait,
What do you mean, why?
mean leader?
We need to be
we're gonna
UNCLOS.
come. Wait, Sure.
What is wrong with you? Wait, what? What is that? I don't understand your question.
My question is, if China is counteracting nations with economic might, why does the U.S. need to be in UNCLOS to give economic counteractions to China?
Because the Oregon State evidence says that in order to lead that coalition, we need to be in UNCLOS. Like, we're just...
We're
I'm
gonna
asking a
go
question.
for it. Yeah.
So, on your sub-point A about Russian expansionism and, like, conflict, can you just, like, explain that? Like,
Yeah.
I kind
So
of...
what we're saying is that Russia's main objective in the Arctic is to counteract the United States, and because the United States is not going right now, Russia has scaled back development.
Okay, so where does the accession to UNCLOS, like, make things?
We're saying that when you accede to UNCLOS, America goes to the Arctic and Russia ramps up its supply.
Why do they go to the Arctic?
Because they have legal certainty and Gardner.
Alright, so about legal certainty in companies going into the Arctic, if profitability levels are high, would they just go into that region regardless?
Absolutely not.
Why not?
Because they don't have the legal certainty and UNCLOS
That hasn't
says-
stopped
hold on,
companies in the
can
past.
Wait, where?
So ExxonMobil, for example, was not allowed to drill in, like, I want to say Lithuania's civil war, but they did anyways. Or no,
What?
Ethiopia.
This is a little confusing, dude. Like,
What do you mean? There's an
like,
Ethiopia
once you
civil
read the
war.
evidence in rebuttal, like, we can discuss it then.
Okay, so, but...
That's three.
Alright, sorry.
It's going to be really important to understand why China is expanding into the South China Sea. Emerson of the Diplomat in 2014 writes that after decades of humiliation by Western nations in the South China Sea, China is expanding for defensive rather than offensive reasons, to gain leverage against U.S. military containment that it can use to negotiate for more favorable guarantees of security and trade. This is important insofar as the negs defending the current policy of U.S. military expansion in the South China Sea, and that means that China's perception of American containment will only continue to increase. That's why Chinese militarization is at an all-time high. In just the last week, Widener of the American Military News finds that Chinese tensions have been escalating, with China further militarizing the Spratly, Paracel, and other island clusters, Chinese bombers holding live fire drills, an incident between an American and Chinese naval destroyer narrowly missing each other, and China canceling peace talks with the United States. Affirming is the only way to reverse this trend, and this is really important. Ashley Townsend of The Guardian in 2018 writes that while U.S. militarism emboldens Chinese hardliners, the only way to shift Chinese policy away from aggression is to impose real political costs on China. Only when a multilateral front threatens economic and diplomatic isolation will Xi Jinping be forced to move back to the center, and that's the only way we're going to be able to see reduced naval aggression. Now, let's go to their case about the Arctic. Their first subpoint is about how it's going to accelerate our expansion in the Arctic. There's a couple problems here. First, they don't prove that we're going to be involved in a dispute with Russia in the Arctic. It's really improbable, especially if that's the risk that we take. Second, this is predicated on their second link in legal certainty. We'll touch up on that later. Then they tell you two reasons why China and the United States war is not likely. But our case is not about China and the United States getting in a war. Our case is about there being is about tensions creating trade shock. And there's two problems here. First, it's not about war between the US and China. It's just about China militarizing and creating tensions and mistrust. That's what causes trade shocks. But second, China and these smaller Asian countries don't have mutually assured destruction, so that deterrence just does not exist in the South China Sea. Now, let's get to the second subpoint about Arctic drilling. First, they tell you we need legal certainty to drill. This also applies to their first one. There's a couple problems here. First, Growth and Heritage Foundation finds that the United States already has full access to a extended continental shelf with bilateral agreements and overlapping countries, as well as federal plans, which is why in the regions where it is profitable, 20% of the ECS is already being drilled and explored by American companies without us joining UNCLOS. Second, oil companies are bloodthirsty and will profit over everything. Historically, ExxonMobil has drilled in some of the most insecure regions in the world. Ethiopia, literally during a civil war, they sent arms to the government and they were violating international law. These companies clearly will just lawyer up to defend profit at all costs. Legal certainty means nothing. Third, even if you don't buy that, they can still sidestep it through foreign subsidiaries, where American companies register under other countries' territories in the Arctic. That's a super easy loophole, and it's cheaper for a lot of companies to do that, because they can just go in a country where the corporate tax rate is 0. Then, the real reason we aren't in the Arctic is the fact that we lack the infrastructure and technology to drill, and thus we prioritize short-term commitments like shale oil over the Arctic. Keith Snyder from the LA Times in 2018 finds, by the time the technology, infrastructure, and favorable oil prices exist to drill in the Arctic, it will be 2040, by which time the price of green technology will already outcompete drilling on a profitability basis, which is why they conclude that, quote, there is no economic justification for going to the outer continental shelf, and they never will be. Finally, Ernest Wong of GMU in 2013 finds that virtually all of the Arctic oil accessible to the United States is in the American 200-mile EEZ, which he concedes we have legal access to. Only 3.6% of it is in the extended continental shelf, which they say we need to accede to enclose in order to drill. This means a couple of things. First of all, the 96% that's in the EEZ would be way more profitable, much easier to drill, meaning if we do have access, we're just going to go in that 96 and not the extra 3%. And B, the fact that we're not drilling in our EEZ right now means that there are clearly other factors in legal certainty. At this point, there's a dozen reasons to doubt their link on this argument, so their drawn-out impacts shouldn't matter, but we have the strongest link into these impacts. These Alan Ward of Forbes finds. Due to geopolitical instability, the next global spike in the price of oil is likely to begin in the South China Sea as a restriction in trade would constrict supply, and speculation on global markets would drive prices to unprecedented highs, which is crucial because if oil prices increase across the world, that will make oil drilling way more profitable, and that will increase the amount of oil drilling that happens in their world.
Is everyone ready? Okay. It's going to be frontlining our second contention and then going to their case. Ready? Starting now. On our second contention, we tell you legal certainty is important. They have three responses. First, they say that bilateral treaties solve, but companies say that bilateral treaties is not enough, and the reason why is because countries outside of bilateral treaties can't sue, and on top of that, bilateral treaties is not the framework treaty Arctic that Russia and Canada have said that they will use. Second, they say that Exxon drilled Ethiopia, but Ethiopia is not the same threat as Russia and Canada has said they will sue, that they will only operate under UNCLOS, and Ethiopia is not going to have the same kind of legal jurisdiction as Russia and Canada. And third of all, they say they can sidestep through subsidiaries, but subsidiaries in Britain can't go mine in US land. We tell you the only way we can get US land if we accede. Then they say that according to this guy, there's going to be 2040 we're going to green tech. The issue here, the Garden explains that still the vast majority of the actual energy that we get is going to be fossil fuels, and the reason why is that developing countries are going to turn to them first. And on top of that, we would tell you that oil is a finite resource, which means why the Garden says that 60% of our energy is still going to be coming through fossil fuels. Lastly, they say that according to Wong, there's a 3.8% is in the exclusive economic zone, 3.8 is in the extended continental shelf. This evidence assumes that Arctic oil is evenly spread. However, according to Penn State, Arctic oil is primarily concentrated in the extended continental shelf. This outweighs on strength of link because most companies say that they want the extended continental shelf. They've been lobbying Congress. Lastly, they say that spikes in the South China Sea are going to lead to profitability. The issue here is that they're spikes. They're short-term, and no company is going to make a long-term investment in the Arctic if it's going to be just a short-term spike on their case. First of all, they say that according to Tolbe, China criticizes the United States. The issue here is that actions speak louder than words. And according to Boa News, the United States scrupulously follows UNCLOS, and like they say, China is vastly violating. So when countries look to the United States and China, they know that China is the hypocrite, and they should be following the United States. Then they say that Philippines has gone towards China. This is one example. However, according to Fan of the East Asia Forum, he tells you that the vast majority of the nations agree with the United States interpretation. Like they say that China is expanding rapidly in the South China Sea. Then they say they say that there has been no rule of law. However, the issue here is according to Fan again, he tells you the United States is now right now doing They say according to Gates, if the United States is not part of UNCLOS, we can't do bilateral and multilateral coalitions. This is not true. According to Fan 18 of the East Asia Forum, the United States is in the status quo doing multilateral military drills with plenty of countries in the South China Sea. They don't give you a specific reason why signing a piece of paper changes our commitment. And on top of that, what we would tell you is insofar as we are doing multilateral drills, how much does signing a piece of paper change our perception of commitment other than Tolbe evidence? Then they say according to let's go to their Hoger evidence. They said China has historically been backing down to international pressure. Three responses here. First of all, that isn't the case anymore. They cite examples from the 70s and 80s, but in 2016, the Philippines ruled against China under UNCLOS, and China did not back down. China does not care. But then second of all, the 70s and 80s are a lot different. In the 70s and 80s, China was a rising power, and they weren't able to challenge the United States. In the status quo, China is challenging the United States, and they cannot look like they're backing down. That is why in the status quo, China would rather actually go and fight against the United States. This is confirmed by Bird 14. He tells you if the United States increases their security commitments, China cannot look like they're backing down. They're going to increase their aggression. This turns it against them. Let's go to their impact from Bloomberg. They tell you that there's going to be a trade spike. Three issues here. First of all, according to the Cato Institute, China stands the most to lose from a trade spike because they train the most in the South China Sea, which is why tensions have never been able to affect the trade spike. That is why there's specific evidence. They tell you 44 million people went into poverty. That is not even about the South China Sea. It's about escalating crop prices, which is what our link is. You can basically drop them right here. It's not even talking about the South China Sea. It's terrible evidence. But then second of all, according to the U.S. Trade Commission, trade has been going up ever since from 2000 to 2016, which ultimately means that their argument does not have a lot of uniqueness. Let's go to their overview. So, the first thing that they tell you is China is only expanding because they were humiliated. This is not true. Because Fuchs explains that China also sees the South China Sea as a strategic objective because there's so much trade. It makes a lot of sense for them to control it. But then second of all, if China sees it as humiliation, if the United States accedes and then China backs down, that's going to increase their humiliation, which means that China is actually going to increase their expansion. Then they say that China has done live fire drills. The issue here is that tensions are never going to increase past that point. Because China has been doing military drills in the past couple of years, we would tell you that doesn't mean that it's going to lead to war, which is why they're never going to significantly impact trade. which is why Bauer finds that even though tensions go up, it always goes down inevitably. It's just a cycle of small increases in tensions. That's what we urge you to vote for the negative side.
Well, we're going to take some prep.
That was ridiculous.
Okay, also, can we see, like before the summer, can we see where Wong says it assumes that it's evenly spread? And we're referencing close to that. Yeah. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you see it during prom?
This is the
Can you see that during prom?
I kind of see it fine.
yeah. This is the oh.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, so here's Wong.
Can you just, we can,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I can.
Wait.
You just paste the two cards into one doc, so like I don't even.
Yeah. Wait. What was the second? Wait. Next.
where ours doesn't control for evenly spread and yours does.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Because I kind of want my computer during.
Yeah.
I'll give it back to you. No, I'll just like
Let's
use
use mine.
his and put it in
Oh,
there.
okay. Should we start?
If you're looking, no,
Yeah.
actually, no, you'd be wasting his time there, Cross.
Oh, yeah.
Not be strategic. You get the evenly spread thing.
No, I'm putting it in from my computer. So I have to hold it up.
It's here.
Alright. Yeah, I have it.
Right now.
First one is Juan, and then the second one is spread.
So, you get this question. So, how come the 2016 tribunal ruling didn't work?
Because China's not going to listen to the tribunal.
And why did China say they're not going to listen to it?
Because
The United States is not part of UNCLOS. That's what they said.
Yeah, but China said that as an excuse, but it doesn't mean that China did it because of that.
Okay, well, why did they do it then?
Because they want to expand.
Because they don't care about
Okay,
what
why do you think China cares about what a tribunal says?
we never say they're going to care about what tribunal says. That's
Okay,
not
so
our
they're
case.
gonna expand
So
it.
the point of our case is not that we're going to sue China and they're just going to listen to us. The point of our case is that we can actually create a multilateral coalition, and when there's 160 nations threatening economic and diplomatic isolation against China, that's what makes them cool.
Okay, I'm glad you could re-explain your case, but I responded to it. Can I ask you a question?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so can you name me a single price spike that has happened specifically because of the South China
We
Sea?
don't say it's happened already.
What? I think it's specifically about rising crops, like those
I just said we didn't say that.
So there's been zero.
No, that
despite
evidence is
escalating
just like
tensions.
to show like what a price spike could do. We never said that's because of the South China Sea.
Okay, so yeah, but you obviously have to give me a single. Insofar as tensions have been
No,
going
no,
up.
no. We don't have to give you an example.
Why not?
We say that in recent years, like literally in the last year or two, that's when China's being aggressive. That's when military spending has reached all-time
China
highs.
has been expanding before that. Everyone knows
Not
this.
aggressive. We tell
Yes,
you in the last
building
year
islands
is
and
when
military exercises,
No, no, no.
etc.
So before we had our navy there, back in 2014, China was just like, yeah, we want the South China Sea. They're doing like economic projects with other countries. After we put our navy there to stop them because we didn't want them to expand their power, that's when China started militarizing everything, and that's why tensions are.
Wait, so you have evidence that says China did not militarize the South China Sea?
That's
before
just
2014?
common knowledge. Yeah.
It's just not common knowledge.
Okay, so
Everyone
when did
knows
they-
that China's been expanding and building military islands. in the South
Expanding
China Sea.
and building military islands are two different things. And also,
You can ask, like, yeah, sure. Like, we're going in circles.
yeah,
You
yeah,
ask
okay. So what are the military drills that we're doing right now with other countries? What is your fam evidence say?
questions. Like, we have military exercises with other, like, we do ship exercises.
Yeah, and your fam evidence also says that because we have our navy there, other countries are becoming more aggressive and now they're challenging Chinese claims on their own. Wouldn't that be a bad thing for tensions?
I didn't say that's a unique reason to vote con. I'm just saying
No,
it's going to
there
happen
is a unique
either
reason
way.
to vote for pro because our argument is that the current strategy of American military is creating
No.
tensions.
The United States strategy is not going to change. They're not going to be like, now that we have UNCLOS, we can all of a sudden stop China.
No, we
The
are.
United
We're
States
trying.
Is, yes. Okay. The United States is never going to believe that a tribunal, even if they back it, without any
It's not
force,
about a
is ever-
tribunal. Our case is not about a tribunal working against China.
Okay, your case is about multilateralism.
Yeah.
I agree. But you don't tell me why UNCLOS specifically, what kind of multilateral coalition is,
Yeah, we
what it
do.
does, etc.
Yeah,
You
we
just give me this
definitely do
vague
that.
okay,
the
why-
Guardian and the Higher Evidence say, both of them say, that what a multilateral coalition would be is us backed by 100 other countries, 160 other countries that are in UNCLOS, threatening economic and diplomatic isolation on China.
What? So we can't do that on
No,
outside
we
of
can't.
UNCLOS?
The 12 evidence and this is really important. The 12 evidence and the agent review evidence say the reason it's not happening now is because they don't trust us because we're not in UNCLOS. Wait, we'll take our last 3
Can you
seconds.
say the Ethiopia one?
Yeah, sure.
It's just a thing that
Oh, no,
I don't think it's an art for it.
It's not putting the pizza.
I don't know if it's art. I can pull the hardware you want. It's just like a thing that happens. Just get
This is great for you guys.
Oh, okay. Like we want it.
It's like a book, so I can't really.
Yeah, just like
Okay, I can point you. It starts.
just like you want to take it on your phone.
It's like such a first.
Yeah.
Like the first sentence.
Yeah, so it starts here, it's like financially smart, and it says it's presented in an extreme case of uncertainty, but this little thing.
What is it for?
Okay.
Is that another page? That was 5 seconds.
Okay. It's about war.
Like the whole page is about a war.
The chapter is right there.
Okay. That's 5 seconds.
I don't remember the chapter title.
Okay, I do this a lot of reading. I can't even read.
We'll take our like 3 seconds. Yeah.
Every single time.
Alright, overview. There's subpoint B. Our case. Actually, no, overview, our case, there's subpoint B. In response to the overview, he says 2 things. First of all, he says refutes that they have a strategic interest to go into the South China Sea. That is not responsive because the higher evidence that we read says that China will choose their strategic and economic relationships over their territorial ambitions. So if we win diplomacy, we are going to win here. The second thing they say is that they face humiliation, they're going to increase expansion. But we say they don't have a choice because once you accede and you get the multinational coalition of 160 countries that can shun China, nothing is going to happen. The third thing he says is that these types of drills won't lead to war. But our argument is about war. It's just general tensions, given the fact that the last week, the economic brief from Widener says that they remilitarized these Spratly, Paracel, and Hanoi Islands. They decreased communications, and military spending in the East Asian region has reached an all-time high. But then, down our case, the first two responses that they read is that we are following the interpretation and that countries support us. But we say that even if they do support us, the Dutale evidence and the Asian review evidence says that because we are not in UNCLOS, we have instilled like a sense of uncertainty in these countries, and they're starting to turn to China, which is why we need to receive the status quo. And the next response he makes is from the FAM evidence that says that we're conducting military drills with ASEAN members. But we say that these types of military drills are the exact same reason why the Gates evidence says that military spending has reached unprecedented levels. But if you affirm the resolution, the Gates evidence says that we are the only actor that has the necessary economic leverage to support these countries, which is why the Borgenson evidence says that we are able to effectively lead the 160 nations. We are able to see effectiveness. But then, on the higher evidence, they say two things. First of all, they say that China won't back down. But the reason why we say that they won't back down is because we're not a part of UNCLOS. Affirming would solve that. Then he says that the 60s and 70s are the different political climate, but our argument still stands because the Guardian evidence and what higher also includes is that the same strategy can apply here. Then, finally, on tensions, they say that China will decrease trade. We say that doesn't matter because tensions are what decreases trade, not China itself. But then, on some point B about drilling, the first thing he does not respond to is the gross evidence that we already have full access to our ascending continental shelf, which is why we're drilling in 20% of that area. We are actively drilling in 20% of that area, which means that their evidence doesn't really matter. The next thing they don't respond to is the wall turn that says that oil price spikes will increase in the South China Sea, and that leads to two disastrous impacts. The first of which is that it puts countries into recession, which means that they go away from environmentalism and towards cheaper, dirty fossil fuels. And B, if oil price spikes increase on a global level, there has to be more drilling globally, which means that their impact about environmentalism will happen. Even if it's a short-term spike, it's a long-term impact. Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
That was 37 seconds. So the order is going to be touching on the overview and then going down their case, then back. Everyone good? Alright, great. I'll start with China. What Jasper doesn't respond to in summary is the Bauer evidence that Josh reads at the bottom of the overview. What Bauer says is that tensions are in an oscillating cycle where they go up and down, but conflict never escalates. How do you know Bauer is true? I will tell you. Number one is their own evidence. In the 70s and 80s, there was multilateral cooperation and tensions went down. That's a reason why in the status quo in our world, because there has been low tensions. But number two, and more importantly, is the impact analysis that Josh gives. Trade has gone up every single year in the SES, but they're saying that there's tensions increasing as well. If their impact is linear between tensions and trade is increasing, then that negates the point that tensions are on the rise. That delinks them from their impact. But second and more importantly, what the FAM evidence says is that the United States is in multilateral cooperation in the SES with joint military drills. What he drops is the secondary response that says that, hey, if we are cooperating in the South China Sea right now, then why do we need a piece of paper to actually bind us? The reason why these people and these countries are actually siding with the US is because it's in their best interest, because they see China as a threat, which is why spending has gone up. But that doesn't really go away when you work for us, because when you vote for them, because China is contingent. A strategy is contingent on expansion. Then, finally, one more thing on the impact level. We say that China won't lead to decreased trade. That's from Cato. He says that tensions decrease trade, but the root cause of tensions is China according to their own internal link, which means that they don't gain access. the place where you vote for us is on our contention on the Arctic. We're getting 2 responses by the end of the summary. The first is that 20% of oil is already being drilled, but we called for their evidence. Just that 20% of leases have been sold, but Groves specifically tells you that there won't be drilling until they get the full maximum legal certainty from UNCLOS. Then recognize what we tell you is that there's $73 billion of oil in the Arctic, and 1/3 of it is to the United States. That's really critical, because what Greenpeace says is that by drilling, we increase warming by 5 degrees, and that decreases emissions crop by 15 degrees. He just said that global spikes in SES would lead to crop increases, but he doesn't respond to Josh's analysis that says companies are going to prioritize the long term. Even if there is a short-term spike, they're not going to just make their investment decision based off of it.
Yeah. Okay, so these 20% of leases, if American companies have already claimed them,
Yeah.
they've already sold them,
Yeah.
how are they not getting sued?
What? Because they didn't build anything yet.
Yeah, they have. Some of them they have.
No, you're saying.
What is the difference between a lease and an active lease? What is the difference?
Our evidence
between
is
a
that
lease?
Active says, so an active lease says you can drill on it, right? However, the Rousseau evidence
So what is
tells
this a
you-
normal lease? You can't drill on it, you just have this land for no reason? No, a normal lease means you
Okay.
have this land. An active lease means
Judges can call for
you're
evidence
being
by the
active
end
in
of
it.
the round,
Yeah.
right? But Rousseau specifically says that those leases you talk about did not give sufficient legal certainty.
So
for
your
active
evidence says that all the leases
Yes.
that my evidence are not being
Yeah.
drilled.
So our evidence says
Yeah,
there's
they can
drilling.
call for it.
You're just saying active leases means there's drilling. So
Yeah.
I don't know how credible that is.
So let's talk about your contention, right? So basically, you just say that at the bottom, you say, so your entire contention is on containing China, and you say that that's why regional tension's gone up. But then you say that tensions are the root cause of like trade, and
Yeah.
China can't stop that.
Yeah.
You just like articulated.
Okay, yeah, sure. So we're not saying that tensions go up and trade goes down. Our argument is that when there's tensions, that can cause trade shocks. And it hasn't happened now.
Yeah.
But the walled evidence is a comprehensive analysis of geopolitical tension in the South China Sea and says that the next global oil spike will happen there. Like, it's really specific. Like, it's a really good piece of evidence.
Why? Why would China
Sure.
want there to be like a
China is not just going to cut off trade for no reason. The thing that happens is that when companies fear that there's going to be a conflict that might break
Yeah,
out,
so
That's why your
insurance
response
rates
isn't
rise,
because
and
our
that's the
argument
rate.
isn't that China
Here's the
artificially
issue.
cuts off.
You yourself, no, that's not our argument. You yourself tell me that China is the root cause of tension.
Chinese aggression.
Yeah, okay, so China's aggressive, so China. So, our argument is that if China progresses to the point where people think that they cannot trade, they think there's going to be a potential for war, and there's no capitalist interest to trade,
That's
then
not what
China
happened.
stands the most to
No,
lose.
that's just not
so they're
what
never
happened.
going to escalate to that point, which is why despite the reason that tensions have been going up for the past 16 years, trade has been going up.
That's not our argument.
And not a
in our
single
case,
single-
and literally in every speech we say it's not just China starting a war. Like, that's not how.
No, that's not our argument
Okay,
either.
so what
China
we
has
say,
been tensions.
it does not have to do with conflict happening. It's
It's
just the
tensions.
risk.
Yeah, we
So
agree.
with China right now,
Yeah.
militarizing multiple islands, canceling peace talks, like that's the risk of conflict,
And our argument
that's
is that
what
it's
causes
a cycle.
trade
still
shock.
going
That's
on.
a cycle,
That's
and
the
it never
power
reaches to the
Okay,
point
so
where
so
there's
when's
a-
the last time it's been like this?
What?
When's the
Like
last
what?
time the tensions have been like this?
What?
Because China has only begun their policy of militarily expanding in the last few years.
I disagree, first of all, but second of all, the war still stands.
How?
Because China's not going to escalate to that point where they lose.
Our
the
case
vote.
is not about
Yeah,
war.
no, yeah,
No,
we
China
understand
understand
that.
that. We
Escalate
escalate
to
to the point where
war.
trade gets spiked. China's not going to escalate to that
Yeah,
point.
but
they
it's not
already
dependent
are.
on
No.
China escalating.
Yes,
to
their
that point.
entire
Yes, they
no,
are. No.
I'll explain.
Wait. You guys keep saying they're not going to escalate to that point, but they
Yeah,
already
okay,
are.
so is
That's
the
why
trade-
the walled
where's the
evidence
trade
says it's
spike
going
then?
to happen.
Where's the trade spike?
The walled evidence is a comprehensive study of geopolitical tension and it says
That
it's
there's
going to happen.
be a spike.
Yes.
But you said China is already doing it.
That's also an
Exactly.
part.
Is that right? It's going to be like really similar to Jasper's summary of this. I'm starting off on the overview.
And then where you?
Our case, then the case.
Okay.
Alright, everyone ready? On the overview, they keep telling you that's an oscillating cycle. That is just not true. We tell you that now, only in the last few years, China's began their policy of militarily expanding. That's why just last week, the Wiseman Act, which they do not respond to, says that China has militarized the Spratly, Hanoi, and Paracel Islands. They've canceled peace talks. They're holding live fighter drills. Our warships almost collapsed into each other, and that almost created conflict. That's really, really high. That's unique to what's happening right now. We tell you that is because of American militarism. That's the higher end, the guardian peace items that they don't respond to. The second thing they tell you is that the 70s and 80s are different than now, and that proves that they can happen without UNCLOS. The 70s and 80s were before UNCLOS. Now that there is UNCLOS and the 160 countries are part of it, but the United States is left out of it, that's what causes mistrust. That's why the Asian Review evidence says the reason our allies in the South China Sea mistrust us is because we are not part of UNCLOS. That's why they're not working with us. Then he tells you that trade is increasing right now when it should be decreasing. We tell you that's only recently, in the last few months, that China's been aggressively expanding. That's what the Wall evidence, which is a comprehensive analysis of geopolitical tensions, says. It's a really good piece of evidence. You should call for it, by the way. It says that the next global oil spike is going to happen in the South China Sea. The last thing it tells you is a spam evidence that says that cooperation is happening right now. But the spam evidence says that because of the American military presence, that's making other countries militarize. That's our point. If every country is militarizing in the South China Sea, that's what causes tensions. That's what starts trade shocks. Affirming and acceding to UNCLOS changes that strategy to multilateral diplomacy. That's going to be really important. The last response they keep extending is that China would never decrease trade. It's not about China decreasing trade. If every country is militarizing like they themselves concede, that's what causes tensions. That's what causes price shocks, which is really important. This is the walled piece of evidence means that if we win our case, we win theirs, because it tells you that high global oil prices, that China will lead to high global oil prices, and if oil prices increase around the world, that is going to cause drilling because it's way more profitable. They just tell you that's only the short term. But we tell you that if companies set up short-term operations, that's going to last in the long term. That was in Jasper's summary. And this outweighs their whole case, because this means it's not just the United States drilling the Arctic, it's every company in every country drilling all around the world. That's way worse for emissions. And also the fact that the 20% of the ECS is being drilled right now. It says active leases. Active leases means you're actively doing something in those leases. It's really muddle on their side at best. It's a super clean ballot for us.
Like 83 seconds left, we're going to take it.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, she's out.
China, then drilling. Everyone ready?
Yeah.
Alright.
So I'm gonna review your case.
I'll start with you. Okay. Is okay. On the top level, we tell you that tensions are always going to oscillate. The one response that we get here is an assertion that they've only started recently militarizing, and the card that they use to support is that 1 week ago China did military drills. That doesn't negate the fact that China has constantly been expanding and militarizing the South China Sea for a couple of years. And we tell you that this has never led to the trade spikes that they talk about, never led to any other impacts, which is why they read you zero evidence that actually says that this historically happened. We tell you that it's just going to die back down. But then second of all, let's dive into the link. They just say countries distrust us if we don't accede to UNCLOS. We tell you that we don't need to accede to UNCLOS to have countries trust us. Number one, they know we are committed to them because we're doing military drills. They actually respond to it and they say military drills are bad. That's not our argument. In either world, the United States wants to have a military presence in the South China Sea. Our argument is that insofar as we are doing military drills, we practically completely follow UNCLOS. Insofar as that is all is true, these countries are definitely going to trust us, and signing a piece of paper is not going to change that. Lastly, on the impact. They don't respond to the warrant behind it. China trades the most in the South China Sea, which means even if tensions do escalate, the Cato Institute card tells you that China has an interest in reducing those tensions, and we tell you that it's never going to reach that point. Let's go back to our case. Even if you do not believe any of the responses I read to their case, we would tell you that drilling outweighs for 2 reasons. First of all, it's on scope, because they're talking about South China Sea trade. We are talking about the entire world's global warming. And second of all, it's on time frame. They are talking about short-term impacts. We tell you global warming is eternal. We tell you that according to Gardner, companies need legal certainty in order to go into the Arctic. The one response they say active leases means they're drilling. No, active leases means they can drill. However, the Rousseau evidence that Drupa tells you is that they are drilling is a very good piece of evidence. Then we tell you that Arctic drilling is going to lead to a 5-degree increase by 2100, and every 1 degree increase is going to lead to a 5 to 15% decrease in crop yields. The one response that we're getting on the impact level is that South China Sea has a conflict, or if there's a price spike, they're going to set up short-term drilling operations. Uncarded, this makes no sense. An oil drill costs millions of dollars to build. You're not going to build an oil drill just to mine for 3 years, and then no, that's not how long a price spike. It's half a year, and then just shut it down when the price spike goes down. This logically makes no sense. So we would tell you, or we urge you to vote for the negative side.